Hey, it's pronounced Vagan, I'm Adam, and the garage is empty because we're waiting for my buddy Chip to come over with his 2015 Mark 7 Golf GTI. We're going to install the aerofabb spoiler extension, which fits obviously the Golf R and the GTI, Mark 7 and 7.5. We've got tools ready to go. Let's get into this. Here is the aerofabb rear spoiler. We've got the box opened up. You can see all of the packaging that's in here and what care aerofabb takes to put all in here. So we've got the spoiler. Underneath that is, well, you can see way under there is your Sour Patch Kid and your hardware. All right, here's everything that comes underneath the spoiler in the box. You have your colored instructions that is nice heavyweight paper, very well printed. Sour Patch Kid, alcohol prep pad, all your hardware. You have your bolts, your outer washers, your inner washers, and your lock nuts, and your adhesion promoter. Make sure you read through all of the instructions before you get started and take a look at this notes section here. Make sure all your hardware is here before you start, otherwise you're not going to be able to get very far. Here's the spoiler itself. You can see all the intricate design and detail that goes into making this. The badge is inlaid into the plastic. There are holes for the mounting bolts. Let's check out the opposite side. aerofabb already pre-installs all of the 3M tape, these little squishy washers that will help seal up the holes. You've also got your QC sticker on here so you know who touched it and when in case there's any problems. One thing that I want to point out too, which is really neat that I didn't realize the detail that goes into this, the thickness of these 3M tapes is different from top to bottom here. And the reason for that is that the way the slip comes out, you can see there's a little tiny step out from down here on the gloss black to where there's the painted surface. So aerofabb is paying attention to that level of detail in their products. Here is everything I used for this project, including this table with a towel on it for a non-abrasive surface. I've got your drill, several different sizes of drill bits. That is 3 30-seconds, 1/8, 5 30-seconds, and 3/16. Blue masking tape to help cover some stuff up to protect your paint. A 3mm Allen wrench, screwdriver, probably even one smaller than this would be better to get the electrical connector off. X-Acto knife to cut some glue or butyl adhesive that is on the spoiler. A couple of interior trim tools will be really helpful to get off that trim on the inside and then also to help pop the spoiler off. This detail spray is acting as lube to help cut that glue. You've got a ratchet with a 10mm socket on it. I just used an extension with an extended socket. Needle nose pliers because the area to tighten up the nuts and the bolts is really, really tight. So having something to help get your fingers in there or help hold the nut to get in there. If you have a 5mm box wrench, then you should use that rather than this crescent wrench that I used. It was a little bit too big to fit in the area. And a blow dryer or heat gun to help heat up the adhesive and get everything to unstick and restick. I want to take a second and point out how high quality these instructions are. So much level of detail, color photos. Every page has something that will really help you through this install, even if you decide not to watch this video. So definitely pay attention, read through these before you start. Whoa. Do you have the hatch pop kit? Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's so nice.
I was like, holy crap. So first step of doing this is to take off this trim piece. There's 4 clips in here. There's one about here and here on either side. You'll grab this and just pull it straight out. Be careful though, on the bottom corners on the left and the right and left, there's a little like hook part in there, so just be cautious when you're pulling it straight out.
Is this tinted? Yeah, I'm gonna try my best not to scratch things. I'm gonna scratch the back. Oh, there goes most of it.
Here's what this trim piece looks like. So right about where I pointed out, there's 4 connection points here. This is a guide, and then there's these 2 little clips down here at the bottom that hook right into this little slot here. So just be careful that when you're pulling that off, that it doesn't break if you can help it. If these fall out, I've seen people do a trick where they basically will widen it so that it holds in place better, and then you can just slide them back in. You can see this one's a little bit loose, so it's been off before, maybe when the windshield was tinted. All right, next we're going to be removing the 3 nuts that holds on the spoiler. So there's one here, there's one right behind this little squishy bit, and then there's one in here. So now the next step after getting those nuts out is to start heating up this area of the spoiler. There's a butyl adhesive that is between these on both sides, and I'll show you detail of like how much this area is. We'll heat this up and then we'll push this up in the next step and start to cut out that adhesive. All right, we've got some tape applied, we've got the sides heated up, and now we are going to start cutting. I've got an X-Acto knife, I've got some detailing spray to lubricate that. You're gonna need to be able to push this up to separate and make a gap so that when you're getting your knife in there, you start cutting it. I'll show you what it looks like after, but it's a black butyl material that will want to keep re-adhering itself and sticking together. So you may have to go back and forth a few times until it fully releases itself. I think maybe because your material is a little bit older, it's wanting to stay separated a little bit easier. So we'll make sure to heat it up and it'll re-stick itself when we put it back together. Kind of got to do a little bit of a sawing action to be able to get through it. We're now at a point where we've cut the adhesive on both sides and we are ready to start removing these clips. So one thing, you know, in aerofabb's instructions, they point out exactly where those clips are, but it's a little bit hard to translate, you know, the picture compared to what's here. So exactly where those clips line up, there is one that is directly straight up here on the edge, and it is located about right here. And then the other 2 that are in the middle, if you follow up the end of your third brake light, there's one here, and then over on this side, you follow up, there's one here right in about the middle, and then back over here on the left side, you've got another clip here. So try and focus on those areas. But before you start getting under here and prying, another thing that I want to show you that is really important is to know, as this goes up in like slow motion, be really careful when you're getting underneath and prying, because what you'll likely end up doing is catching the metal. This is a little bit harder to see because of the carbon steel gray body, but this is the plastic here, and then this is the metal. So what I was doing the very first time I was trying this is that I got my tool underneath the metal part and I was just prying and prying and prying and nothing was happening. Well, you got to get underneath, here we go, underneath this plastic part. All right, so we're gonna start on one edge and work our way across. And so what I'm gonna do is just get my tool up under just this edge here and start working so I can get my fingers underneath to hold it. And there we go, we just popped the first clip. And so I'll continue working across, gonna line up with where that third brake light is. Make sure that you just barely get underneath the spoiler to lift that up, otherwise you're gonna be prying against the metal. One thing that aerofabb recommends too is to press down on the tail end of the spoiler while you're lifting up. You can see that I think this other clip just popped up here. See, line up with the right spot. Ready? And one thing that may happen too for you is if it's warm out or you have a newer car, there we go, have that popped up. Your adhesive on the ends will probably start to pull itself back together. Yeah, it is. All right, so as we cut this and we're prying up, you can see that butyl starting to stick itself back together. So that's what you're going to be working with, kind of fighting against and needing to go back and cut that before you push the spoiler off the car. All right, so I just went back and cut this butyl here again. It's already starting to stick itself back on. So I'm just going to kind of keep working this. There we go, got that popped up. And voila. All right, I have my trusty assistant holding up the spoiler here. This is the washer connection. This clip just slides off. So you just get a screwdriver underneath there and pry that off. And then you have your third brake light electrical connection. You'll just depress and pull it straight out. It's like weird because it like doesn't want to depress, and then there we go. See if it'll spring right into my eyeballs. This one is hanging on there. Okay, So now this will just pull straight off. Oh, nothing came out. Cool. So here's a real quick look at what the car looks like without the spoiler. Again, where the pins all line in, or clips. Here's the wire connector. What's really challenging about this is that where this sits and how you have to get it out, you have to use a little screwdriver to depress this because there's not enough room to get your finger in there unless you have maybe your 2-year-old help you pull that out. On the washer connector, what's really interesting about this is that you've got this little C-clip that you'll put on here. I'll show you the easiest way I found out to put this on. This clip is directional. It only goes on one way. So when we put it back on the car, we'll put it on the part that's connected to the spoiler. And then when you go and you'll just slide it right in there and it'll clip right in place. I'll show you how to do that when we reassemble. All right, so here's one important bit that I want to show off real quick is this shape and this area of where the butyl lies. So it's kind of this triangular shape that if you have a longer X-Acto knife to be able to get in there, that will be helpful, but I was able to do it with just a standard size blade. And here's what it looks like on the spoiler itself. So here is the underside of the spoiler. I just wanted to show again how these clips line up. So this area is where the hinge is, and you can see just this edge of plastic is what is exposed beyond the metal. So like the metal comes up almost to the same edge here. But the hinge is here, your clip is here, so that's where you want to start prying, is right on that outer edge. The inner clips where the third brake light are almost line up right with the end of the third brake light, so that's where you'll want to pry for your best chance at getting that off. Let's see if we broke any of these guiding pins like I did on mine. Nope, they are all still intact. I did not over pry on these ones. Be cautious. We just realized when you're taking everything off, some of these little foam and rubber washers will likely come off, either sticking to the paint or maybe even be loose. So I don't know that they're super important, but you might lose one or two. I think giving it just a clean wipe, or you can even use this detail spray if you want to.
It's actually a lot cleaner than I thought it was.
We have the spoiler off the car. Now we're looking at prepping this surface and also taking off some of this adhesive cover. So the first thing that you do is take off what is labeled A for the 3M tape on these spoilers. All right, so there's one side. All right, there we go. Okay, so we have A removed. In the instructions, it also talks about partially removing what is labeled as B. So that's both of these upper strips here is labeled as B. All right, and so for B, you're only going to pull this back a little ways. The idea is that you want to have enough that's hanging out here that will extend, that you can grab, so that when you put the spoiler on, you'll connect it with the A points and a little bit with B, and then you'll be able to peel it all off while the extension is on the spoiler itself. So now what we're going to do is open up the alcohol prep pad. We're going to prepare the underside of the spoiler to accept the spoiler extension. And so just take a look at those same areas that you're going to making the connecting point. So A is going to be somewhere right in here, and then B is going to be all along this top side. I would say including up to this painted area here. So I would go ahead and just like totally clean the underside of this even before using the alcohol prep pad, just so you don't have a bunch of dirt and stuff built up. And you can just clean all of this area. And then we will want to allow that to dry, so we're going to wait a little bit. All right, so now we're about to apply the adhesion promoter. You're going to shake this for a little bit, and then you're going to crush it here at the tube, and then you're going to apply it to all these areas where the 3M tape is going to be. So I'll show you that right now. All right, so I'm going to start doing the adhesion promoter all the way along the top here, since I know that's one of the areas that I think is going to be most important. I'm even going to do it right on this painted surface. In the instructions, be careful. It says that you don't want to apply this adhesion promoter to anywhere that you don't want to promote adhesion, right? That makes sense.
Here-ish. We'll do an area. And right here we'll do an area. It's all going to be covered up anyway, so.
All right, and then we wait about 5 minutes for that to dry. So now we've just waited 5 minutes. We've got the adhesion promoter on in place. And now the next step is to take the spoiler extension. You want to hover over where you're going to be putting this. You can use the third brake light as reference. They also recommend putting the bottom of the spoiler extension flush with the bottom of the spoiler. From experience of installing 2 of these on other cars before, I'm gonna go just a hair above flush because it was a little tight on those side pieces for me when I did it before. So here we go. And you want to be super careful when you're putting this on, because once it's on there and sticking, even if you haven't pressed it, it's never coming off again. Guaranteed. Woo! So that's a good segue into the fact that I have these little stands under here to help support this, just because this edge sticks down. So you can do this maybe on the edge of a table, but for the purpose of filming, it just made it easy to use these chalk stands. All right, so now we've got this in place. I'm going to press and hold firmly right over this tape A portion to really get it to stick. All right, because of movie magic, we are now 30 seconds in the future. And because you have these little 2 strips hanging out here, you're able to fold both of those off together all the way. And you'll work from the center outward to adhere both of those strips. Make sure you go all the way out to the edge, because the curvature of the spoiler kind of lifts these ends here. So now I'm going to flip the spoiler over. I'm going to firmly press down on the whole thing for about 30 seconds. All right, how's it look?
Good.
Looks like a pro job. Yes, I did it perfectly here. In aerofabb's instructions, they talk about how getting this adhesive is a critical step, and it really is, because this is what is really holding down most of the spoiler. You're going to be bolting in the bottom edge here. It's really a safety factor, but man, this thing now is just, it's stuck on there. It's never coming off. All right, in this next step, we are going to be drilling into the spoiler here using the spoiler extension as a guide. aerofabb's instructions have you step through 4 different bits to start from very small and go up to the final size. This is 3/30 seconds, 1/8, 5/30 seconds, and 3/16, so that you don't end up cracking, splitting, or damaging your spoiler in the process. All right, so we're just about to start drilling through here. One thing that you should be cautious with is that there is ribbing on the backside here, so just make sure that you're not busting through and destroying anything else. You're really not going to hurt anything if you do, but just be cautious. If anybody's doing this that has never drilled into plastic before, you just want to be super careful with these bits and doing the steps. As you get bigger, the drill wants to suck through, so you'll like end up going through very fast. Try and hit straight in the center of this hole for the smallest 3/30 seconds bit. And it is plastic, so just be careful not to go too hard. So this is now the final step. Because these bolts will be pretty tight in here, you can go ahead and ream out just to make sure that it's going to slip in there relatively easy. All right, so this next step now is to thread these bolts in. Even at the largest recommended size, this is still pretty tight, so you're probably gonna have to end up threading this through the plastic. I've made a quick change. It's actually going to be easiest to flip this over if you can get this out on the edge of a table and set the nut in there, or set the washer in there and the nut, so that you can use gravity to your advantage to get these together.
Like, I don't know if it's just me, but I never heard anybody else talk about this, like how hard this part is.
All right, so I'm going to, since I've kind of created some threads in the spoiler itself, I'm going to tighten up the bolt as far as it'll go. Then I have to use my wrench to tighten up the nut on that bolt. So I'll probably end up having to hold the bottom side of it with the Allen head. So I'm using my needle nose pliers to tighten down this nut that's in here, because I don't have a box wrench or open end wrench that is small enough to fit in here. I believe these are 5mm, so if you want to make it easier on yourself and make sure that these get tightened down all the way, you're going to need that because of how tight this space is. Hey, there's some information you're about to see that I didn't get a chance to record for whatever reason. I don't think I hit the record button correctly. So I'm about to show you the washer fluid connection, the little black C clip that goes on there. It only goes on one direction, so don't get frustrated with it. And make sure you put it on before you make the connection to the nipple for the washer fluid. It just makes everything so much easier. So what you're about to see is me showing you a little bit about the clip, and then you're gonna see it on, and then I'll show you where I just snap it on when I'm putting the spoiler back on. Here we go. All right, let's see here. All right, so first thing I'm gonna do is connect this. Since we have the clip on here, we'll just be able to press that right on. Boom, that's on. And then we're gonna put the electrical connector back in here. There's also a little hoop that you can put the wire through. Right over there. Got it. Now just go ahead and set that right on there, and it should kind of find its way in there. We're gonna go ahead and pop this down. Since we know where all those clips are. 2, 3, and 4. We're on there. All right, so we've just got the spoiler on. Now what we're gonna do is probably peel this tape off. We'll heat up these areas so that this butyl adhesive in here makes contact again. I mean, this thing is already sticking on here even without putting the bolts and nuts back into the main spoiler from the underside. All right, so we've got that in. We're gonna put the nuts back in here and get this all buttoned up, put this plastic trim piece back on, and we'll be done.
There you go, nice.
Hey! All right, we have the aerofabb spoiler on here. On the carbon steel gray, it's really hard to see, but check that out. It looks really nice, that spoiler extension. I wanted to show real quick the detail of how this splitter fits in here. Spoiler extension. It's really hard to see in the garage, and it's hard to get the right lighting because of all the reflections, but I did a little bit of a gap there, just a hair, just so that this piece and corner is able to fit in there really nice. But look at how that fit and finish works on there. It's really hard to get a good picture of this thing, so doing them video kind of does it justice, but you really got to see these in person to really appreciate that detail and the look.